I created a program that dives into the complicated world of personal finance by creating a program tailored to analyze my transactions. And this program thoroughly examines both my income generation and expenditure patterns with the focus on transactions made through my US bank debit card. So using Python and Google Colab, I went on a journey to gain more insight into my financial behaviors, ultimately aiming to see where I can slow down my spending using my program today. So first I import pandas SPD, and then I read the CSV file named spacebar in CSV from Google Drive. And I do this to access my CSV in my Google Drive to basically kind of just output everything that I'm working with today. So I had to copy, like what's called. First, I had to input my e-statements into an Excel spreadsheet and then copy it into Excel and modify each column and row to make it easier to program and filter everything else inside. But more so on the code, I use the read CSV function to access this data frame object. And this allows me and you to kind of manipulate it and analyze it as well. And then I kind of sort, I use the sort value function specifically by the date here to kind of like organize it. And to be honest with you, some of the dates kind of got messed up, like from December 2023 to here, kind of gets mixed up in here, if I'm being quite honest with you. And yeah, I use the sort function to kind of deal with that. And then over here, so I begin to filter the data, and I kind of isolate transactions labeled as electronic deposit Gonzaga, and I do this within square brackets, and I select the rows where the transaction column matches electronic deposit Gonzaga, and I assign the filtered subset of data to a new data frame named Gonzaga deposits and then I print out crucial details about these deposits, specifically more so on the date, transaction, and then the amount. And then following that, I compute the total sum of deposits received from Gonzaga, and this is accomplished by summing up all the deposit amounts within the Gonzaga deposits data frame over here. And then I extract the amount column and use the sum method to calculate the total, which I do over here. And lastly, I print out the total amount of deposits from Gonzaga. And by doing so, I obtain a cumulative sum of money received from the source. So I basically do this to get all of my transaction category amount, like the amounts, like all that data onto here to make sure I have all of it, all of like the data from my CSV, like all of the data from the transaction categories that from my CSV in here. And I kind of check that by adding the sum. I kind of use the sum function to add all of it to make sure I have each one. And I kind of did this in Excel to double check as well. So I do this with my deposits from Gonzaga, and I also do this with my withdrawals. So if I do this from my grocery transactions, my extraneous transactions, my online shop transactions, my Venmo transactions, my rent transactions, and my food transactions. And I'll just run it again just to make sure it works. Each of these work, just letting my transaction, right? And I also use it for my transportation transactions. Next, so I import the IP widgets library, analyze it with widgets, and my reasoning for this is, kind of like what I mentioned before, but not really. I kind of do this to provide a more interactive widget for Jupyter Notebook, and then I import the display function, and this is to display the widgets and output in the notebook. And then I do the read function again, and then I kind of do the read function to make sure, I am reading the right data rather than reading just something random and creating something random. So then I have I define a list of transaction categories, and then I filter out the rows where the transaction column, matches, one of the specified categories. Then I create a drop-down widget using the category drop-down and the widget drop-down, kind of create a function for that. Then I tend to filter out the data. Then I define the data, and I do this by naming it update output, and it basically updates the output based on the selected category from the dropdown. And then I do like an if else function. Basically, if a specific category is selected, it displays the sum of amounts for transactions, and if the selected category is total, it calculates and displays the total amount for each transaction. And then I drop it down using this widget's interactive function. And basically all this code that I just kind of explained and kind of summarized up is basically more so organizing all of the transactions, like all the transaction categories, organizing all the transaction categories. And I do that with transportation, food, rent, Venmo, online shop. And it shows me like the date, how much I purchased on the date. And then for total, it kind of just adds up all the sums of those amounts of transactions. You import matplotlib pyplot as PLT. So this defines this is a plotting library used for creating visualizations in Python, importing it as a PLT, and it's a common convention for convenience. And then I do the read CSV, same kind of like these two over here. I kind of explained earlier on what they do, so I'm not going to really explain it again. So then I I do this block over here kind of is a function of categories transactions, and it kind of like basically it it categorizes transactions as income if the amount is positive, and otherwise it returns it as an expense if it's like negative. Then I applied a categorization to transactions, adding a new column called category, and then I calculate the total spending by doing a sum and reset index function, and then I defined a budget for each category. And then I have like a color palette for each category as well. So the income is represented as light green, and the expense is represented as light coral. And then over here, this block over here basically creates the plot pie chart for expense breakdown. And you're going to see what it does in a second. And then I also identify the categories that I overspend in. And then I also have like a if else function to basically recommend savings areas based on my overspending and stuff. And, I wanted to make that more interactive, but that is something that I did not get to in my project. So then I print it out, and this is what it gives me. So basically, it shows like I gotta spend more money than I make, and then it gives me like a breakdown. It shows like you have exceeded your budget for expenses because I definitely spent way more than I made. And I wanted to make it more interactive, but I couldn't. So then over here, this is when I create a scatter plot to kind of just show like how my money was spent from December all the way to March. And basically, I do the mat import pandas and import matplot, and then I do PD to daytime. So this kind of ensures like I start from the very beginning, and then this kind of determines the size of the figure that I want to create. Then this function over here shows that each data point is represented by the marker O. So this basically creates the scatter plot with date. Then this sets the title. Then this labels the x-axis, the plot title basically sets the title. Plot x label, it basically labels the x-axis as date. Then plot y label, same thing, but it's the y-axis this time, and it labels it as amount. Then I wanted to turn off the grid lines because I didn't really like the lines on my scatter plot. And then we do the plot show to display, and basically it shows for my transactions from before January, so December, all the way to the very end of March. Yeah, that's basically what my code does. I want to say this specific part of my code was the most important because it kind of broke down for me how like where most of my money goes to, and like how like I could probably like use my own like priorities to see what I should prioritize more. Kind of like I probably shouldn't be spending over like $900 on food, considering the fact that I have an EBT. So this kind of breaks it down, and I feel like this drop down menu is just super important to like it could be kind of used in like my everyday life, and I think this was probably the most important part of my code in order to understand like everything else. So yeah, I think I want to share that. And also in terms of like this project and some feedback, I think overall feedback is I really liked how much like the time frame you gave us, but penalizing like students for teaming up I don't think was very great. And also like not giving us a specific rubric or like like you gave us a rubric, but I felt like there could have been a lot more to like at least give us an idea of like what criterias we should meet for our project, because everybody's project and their quality is very different. So like I feel like if you gave us a specific like quality and like criteria, I think that would have been really good for the students. Yeah, thank you so much. That is all for today.